Hi, I'm Zerah Pulsipher. I'm a Mormon pioneer. Let me tell you the story of my life. I was born June 24, 1789 in Rockingham, Vermont. The name of my parents were John Pulsipher and Elizabeth Dutton. I was eighth of 12 children. I came from a heritage of New England settlers and patriots, including my father and grandfather who fought in the Battle of Bunker Hill. I gloried in the American independence. I spent much of my childhood working on my parents' farm in Rockingham. Our town was along the Connecticut River. In 1810 I married a very agreeable companion named Polly Randall. We had a daughter Harriet 1 year later and Polly died 2 years into the marriage. I moved to Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, in 1814. The next year, I married Mary Brown who was 17 and I was 27. We had 11 children together, Mary Ann, Almira, Nelson, Mariah, Sarah, John, Charles, Mary Ann, William, Eliza Jane, and Fidelia. We lived in Pennsylvania 7 years. Did a great deal of hard work there. Then left and moved to New York State in Onondaga County in 1822. I built a mill and a Baptist meeting house. In 1830, we moved within the county to Spafford, New York. In the summer of 1831, I heard Solomon Chamberlain speak of an ancient record or golden Bible near Palmyra, which remark struck me like a shock of electricity. The same time I thought it might be something that would give light to my mind upon principles that I had been thinking of for years. Jared Carter preached before a large congregation and shared the message of the restoration. I sat in that congregation. As I was thrashing in my barn with the doors shut, all at once there seemed to be a ray of light from heaven which caused me to stop work for a short time. Then in a few minutes another light came over my head which caused me to look up. I thought I saw the angels with the Book of Mormon in their hands in the attitude of showing it to me and saying, "This is the great revelation of the last days in which all things spoken of by the prophets must be fulfilled." The vision was so open and plain that I began to rejoice exceedingly, so that I walked the length of my barn crying glory hallelujah to the God and the Lamb forever. After being baptized in January 1832, I had a great desire to share the message of the restoration with others. "Where on earth are you going?" my wife asked. "I don't know, only that I'm going to preach the gospel. The Lord will show me where to go. I am going where He guides me." She inquired. "How long will you be gone?" "I don't know. Just long enough to do the work the Lord has for me to do." I served a mission in New York. I gave a 1.5-hour sermon and afterwards baptized Wilford Woodruff, who later became the president of the church. In the spring of 1835, our family gathered with the saints to Kirtland, Ohio. I assisted in the building of the temple. In 1836, I was ordained an elder. Joseph Smith said of me, "From the satisfactory evidence which we have of his good moral character, and his zeal for the cause of righteousness, and diligent desire to persuade men to forsake evil and embrace truth, we confidently recommend him to all candid and upright people as a worthy member of society." In 1837, I traveled and preached extensively through the eastern states and Canada in the rise of the church. In 1838 I was called as a president of the 70. My name can be found in D&C section 124. Due to persecution in Kirtland, I helped lead a group of over 500 poor saints to far west Missouri. This is known as the Kirtland Camp. I was a poor man with a large family. One night on my knees a messenger with a white robe appeared and told me, "Be one and ye shall have enough," as he looked to the faithful saints. We settled in Adirondack, Missouri. I assisted building 16 houses. The people being much opposed to our faith decided to drive us out of the country. And obtain their farms back again that we had paid for. I never slept many nights while I was there without having my sword and pistols by my bed and frequently called by the sound of the bugle to defend the people from mobs. I fled with my family across the Mississippi River to Bear Creek, Illinois. Then we moved to Quincy for a year, then in 1841 we moved to Nauvoo. We lived at Warrington Block 39, Lot 1. You can research the 3 farms I worked on at Nauvoo. We lived in the Nauvoo 3rd Ward. We were hungry and didn't have enough until harvest. I prayed then dreamed that my family made baskets for money. In the morning, we made baskets and sold them and had enough food until harvest. It was thought that my daughter Mariah would die, but I did not give her up. I called to the bed one day to see her close her eyes in death. I was seeing her apparently breathing her last. At that instant the Spirit of God came upon me. I said, Mariah, do you want to live to raise a family, keep the commandments of God and do all you can to build up Zion? She opened her eyes and said she did. I said to her, then you will live. That hour she sat up in bed and immediately got well. Joseph Smith was martyred in 1844. Once the 12 returned, we met to see who would be his successor. Brigham Young began to speak and at that time I sat with my back towards the stand. When Brigham spoke he spoke with the voice of Joseph and we turned around to see Brigham speaking in Joseph's voice and beheld Joseph's mantle had fallen on him. We just kept still and continued our work on the Nauvoo temple. We finished it and got our endowments on December 12, 1845. We did that with the Pratts, Youngs, Hancocks, and Harrimans. We left Illinois. We went on and crossed the Mississippi and Missouri rivers and established a place called Winter Quarters. That fall and winter the church suffered exceedingly. When we got there we found so many sick and dying from exposure that I took my team and what help I could raise and drew timber 4 miles and built 6 houses. On the way to Winter Quarters, I provided leadership including helping to locate the settlement of Garden Grove, Iowa. My son John was laid on the bed and was near the gate of death for a long time, when I was called in to see him breathe his last. He was taken with pneumonia. I called to him and he opened his eyes. I said, John, you are not going to die now. I cannot spare you now. You must get well to help us move through the mountains. He immediately began to vomit a large quantity of the most filthy matter as black as ink. From that hour he began to recover and soon was able to drive a team. In 1848 I was in Brigham Young's company to cross the plains. I was a captain of 100. We started about the last of May with about 60 wagons. We prospered in our move without much accident. One boy got his leg broke and one man broke his arm in my company, but I set it and it soon got well as did the leg. We got through the latter part of September. In the Salt Lake Valley, the price of grain was expensive. This made me feel very disagreeable because I had a large family and 3 other families of my friends that had no way of helping themselves. I thought on it one night and then came to the conclusion that I would build a mill. We built one and named it Cattle Grist Mill. Indian meal would command $5 a bushel, but so many poor had none that I sold all that I had to spare at $1 a bushel, though I was offered $5 by those that were going to California. But their gold would not buy it of me when so many poor were starving. In 1851 the crickets were very troublesome and destroyed many crops. But in 1852 the gulls came and destroyed them according to the word of the prophet. We built a house 34 by 30 feet in Jordan. In 1854, I entered into polygamy and married Prudence McNamara, who was 50. I had a testimony of the divinity of polygamy. In 1856, Heber C. Kimball called me to awake to my duty. He was right, I had a high calling and had fallen asleep with many others. Rather than being angry, I became more diligent in fulfilling my assignment. In March of 1857 I married a young Welsh woman named Martha Hughes. She bore me 5 children, Martha, Mary, Zerah, Sarah, and Andrew. We helped cultivate the bare desert and make it blossom like the rose. I was one of the Salt Lake City Council most of the time we were there. Here is the 1860 Salt Lake census within the 16th ward. I am listed as a farmer. In 1862 I overstepped my authority and transcended the bounds of the priesthood in the ordinance of sealing, for which I was cited to appear before the first presidency of the church. I performed 2 unauthorized polygamous marriages without my bishop's approval. I was released as a general authority. I was required to be rebaptized. My boys were called to the Southern Mission, meaning Southern Utah near St. George. I would go there if the presidency thought it best. No sooner than they heard of it they sent me an order to go with my family. I, therefore, put myself in the way of selling my property. My boys heard of it and came to help me move to Dixie. In 1862 I removed to Shoal Creek, where my boys were keeping a herd for the Southern people. I found it to be a very healthy section, and I enjoyed myself very well, considering the obscurity of the place. We were a great distance from the abode of the white men in the very midst of the roving red men. I presiding over the settlement of Hebron, Utah from 1863 to 1869. In 1870, I am listed under Santa Clara, Utah. Here is the census of my family. I gave some advice to my children. First, get the Spirit of the Lord and keep it. Pray mighty to God, let your thoughts be raised in prayer day and night, that you may have the Spirit of the Lord to be with you. Never speak till you know what you are going to say. Never whip a child in anger. Be sure that the Spirit of the Lord dictates to you when you groom your children. Never let your girls go with men that you do not know, for some men have the fever of seducing, therefore, beware who they go with. I died at Hebron, Utah on January 1, 1872 at 82 years old. My life has been a very temperate one, and I have derived great bodily strength and vigor of mind. I was sensible to the last. I am buried in the Hebron Cemetery, which is just west of Enterprise, Utah. I was the father of 17 children, 8 of them came to the mountains with me, from whom I have 65 grandchildren and 37 great-grandchildren at the time of my death. If you take a DNA test today, you may find you are among my many posterity. I am Zerah Pulsipher. I lived through much of Mormon history, including the Kirtland, Missouri, and Nauvoo eras, the pioneer trek west, and the settlement of southern Utah. I loved my family. Thank you for listening to my story.